Welcome to Vibe Dance Music. Today, I would like to discuss how percussion affects musicality. As a quick reminder, last time we said that musicality is an expression of emotion, and to do anything useful with that idea, we would have to look at music as a set of vertical layers. And the first layer we are going to look at is the percussion layer. Now, before we start, this topic is going to get broken into two videos. In this video, we are going to identify what lives in the percussion layer, how it affects our movement, and explain what this has to do with musicality as an expression of emotion. In the next video, we'll start putting all of that into practice. The most common driver for our percussion layer is going to be percussion instruments. They can be unpitched, so something like drums, or they can be pitched, such as a piano or a guitar. The basic idea is that if you have an instrument with a surface you can strike or a string you can pluck, you can probably use it for percussion. What matters is that the sound you're using for percussion happens in a quick pulse. So a click would fit into our percussion layer, but a sound that builds up slowly, such as a bass sound, would not. The reason for this is that we can track these quick auditory events accurately. However, sounds that build up slowly over time, we're not as good at figuring out where those begin. And the catch is that where we perceive those as starting is based on our own internal clocks. So if you and I both hear the same sound, and it's a slow build-up bass sound, you might hear it start at one point in time, and I might hear it start just a little bit earlier or a little bit later. And keep in mind when I say this, by a little bit, I mean just a few fractions of a second. This is not a free pass to start dancing to a 120 beat per minute song as if it were 100 beats per minute. All right, so that gives us an idea of what goes into our percussion layer, but how does that affect our movement? And just as importantly, what does that have to do with musicality being an expression of emotion? The answer to the first question is pretty simple. We use percussion to keep time with the music. The movement that it most strongly inspires in the body is usually a striking motion. So when we're dancing, this is usually going to manifest itself as a foot strike, but it could also be something like a finger tap or a finger snap or some other quick, punctuated movement. What the percussion layer does not inspire, however, is weight changes from one foot to the next. That role belongs to bass, which is something we will cover in an upcoming video. Alright, so that covers the movement that percussion inspires, but how does that relate to musicality? The short answer is that we use percussion to stay in time with the music, and connecting with the timing of the music is our first opportunity to connect with the song. Since it's our first opportunity to connect with the song, it's our first opportunity to be musical. There is more to it than that, however. When we talk about emotion in the music perception world, it's usually with respect to something called the circumplex model of emotion or the circumplex model of effect. And I do realize that sounds complicated, but just bear with me for a minute. The x-axis on our model is what we call valence. This tells us how positive or negative an emotion is. The y-axis, which is what we care about with respect to percussion, tells us how intense that emotion is. It's called the arousal state. So it could be very intense if it's high on the axis, or very sedate if it's low on the axis. And the way that this relates to percussion is through tempo. So a song with a slower tempo, let's say 70 beats per minute, is going to be more relaxed, it's going to be more sedate, and it's going to be more calm. On the other hand, a song with a higher tempo, let's say 160 or 180 beats per minute, is going to be more intense, it's going to be more energetic, and it's going to be more lively. Let's dig a little bit deeper into this. So the reason that different tempos will get associated with different intensity states, or arousal states as we normally call them, has to do with how that tempo relates to our heart rate. It also relates to how our heart rates change in different emotional states. The basic idea here is that when you're in a more relaxed state, when you're more sedate, your heart rate is going to be lower. Think about waking up from a nap or just having a really relaxing day. On the other hand, when you're in a more stimulated state, your heart rate is going to go up. So what happens is your brain takes this external stimulus of either a really fast or really slow beat, compares it to your heart rate, and that can affect your emotional state. It's also important to be aware that if you change the number of subdivisions in a beat, that will have the same effect as changing the tempo. So let's look at an example of that. All right, so what I hope you noticed in that example is that as the hi-hats hit more often, the intensity went up. And before we move on, there are two important things to keep in mind. The first is that we don't normally listen to percussion in a vacuum, at least not in Western music. And the second is that while it is true that your heart rate will change with the tempo, it doesn't normally change very much. So let's put all this together. The percussion layer defines the timing of the music that we are dancing to. It usually inspires a striking movement. Keeping time with the music is our first opportunity to be musical, and is therefore the first way we can express emotion. Faster tempos and more beat subdivisions are associated with more heightened arousal states, while slower tempos and fewer beat subdivisions are associated with lower arousal states. This opens up options for our dancing. As the number of subdivisions increases, we have more opportunities to express movement in a striking motion. When the subdivisions decrease or the tempo goes down, that lowers our opportunities for striking movements. But please do remember that this doesn't happen in a vacuum, and we don't normally just dance to drums. With more going on in the music, we're going to have a plethora of opportunities for how we move our body to that music. This is just one aspect. Anyway, that wraps up the perceptual side of our conversation about the percussion layer. Next time, we will start putting all of this into practice. So if you like this video, let me know what you think in the comments below. What made sense? What didn't? And let me know any questions you have. And until next time, stay safe, keep dancing, and thank you for watching.